Hello, everybody. I am the fucking bear, and I'm slipping down. Slip downwards, down to the
On the way
place.
back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left. My mom ended up leaving everything behind.
I think I'm getting what's going on here. Like, I think that after kind of the high-profile thing with the dragon slide, and maybe like the thing with Barbara and her dying, I think the tabloids they just love sensationalism. They probably started claiming that there was a curse. And it probably got ingrained in us, and just bad coincidences of people dying in really bad ways. I can imagine how that can eat at you.
What happened that night had been coming for a long time. Maybe it should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another. All that's left now is to tell you about that last night.
Norwegian. Norske folken banter. Awesome. Yep. Riding on your leg. Or your... I don't know.
That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
the power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance, or that Edie had a key to it.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning. Okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. You know,
I like her.
that house every day of
She's
my life.
spry.
But I never thought When the fog rolled in, I lost my way.
Nah, that's cool. I'll just keep going straight. It just won't move the mouse.
I got turned around.
I don't see how that's possible given that I didn't move my mouse. So you trying to pull some shit on me, alright?
For a while, I wandered. I started seeing things. Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it. Let go.
Give me it,
I
bitch.
kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it.
Do the super wiggle. Do the
A
wiggle.
few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it. But she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is.
I'm being born.
This journal was supposed to be for you.
I'm being boarded.
I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you. And tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
Um, I've actually spent a large portion of my life trying to convince people that video games are a form of art. And I think it's games like this that remind me that I don't really care what video games are. I don't care what they're seen as. I don't care what other people want to attach to them. I don't care about labels. I don't care about classifications. I don't care what other people think about video games. And it took me a very long time to get to that point. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that being into games for pretty much my entire life wasn't always great. I think pretty much any boy that grew up liking video games knew what it was like to be made fun of for it. We used to just fucking make a fat plumber run to the right of the screen until he jumped on a flagpole. Did you fucking in a million years think that we'd be playing shit like this? I don't know. I can't really say that I ever imagined games could be anything beyond what they were back then. And then just, it felt like every year, it was just, that bar was just going higher and higher. I'm never gonna... I've been told that I need to grow out of this shit. I've been insulted, even recently, by people I thought cared about me for spending time doing this stuff. Experiencing something like this gives me the confidence to just say fuck you to those people. I got more joy out of this than most of what I've done in my life. The end. Tiatam. I wonder why some of those are circling like that. Yeah. Just trying to remember where that would go.
That whole last day.
I'm just trying to figure out why
pack and didn't say a
those
word.
two are like
until supper, which
circling
raised a
together
glass
to
and
each
said,
other.
To our final night to...
But I guess it's just connected. I think they're circling just to tell you that selecting each one is the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Pretty much this entire playthrough has been spent desperately trying to keep myself from bursting into tears. And compared to Unfinished Swan, I will say that I liked Unfinished Swan more just because I felt that it was more pure. And I don't like saying it that way because I don't mean it as an insult to this. Unfinished Swan was... And it could just be because that was their first one. And so, like, when I played that, I honestly, when I got Unfinished Swan, I literally thought it was just going to be some little paint gooping game that I would spend like 5 minutes fucking with. I didn't know what I was getting into. I had no fucking clue what I was getting into. Whereas with this, I did. So that could be why it didn't hit me as hard as Unfinished Swan did. I can't really think of many criticisms. On a technical standpoint, the controls could be wonky at times. Basically, anytime you had to operate something, which direction the mouse would make happen what do be was sometimes weird. The criticism you can always give that it's a non-criticism. You know, it's like insultament and a complisult. How do you combine compliment and insult? I don't know. Is that I wish it was longer. I wish it had been longer. Like, I feel that it peaked early. I don't know if this was like a development thing, but I feel almost as if it started strong and then kind of fizzled. But like, when I say that, it's such a light fizzle. You get what I'm saying? Like, the amount of fizzle was not enough to detract at all. But those first few levels were so creative compared to the later levels. Which is not to say the later levels weren't. It's just, like, for instance, when I was, I think the turning point was when I was swinging on the swing set. And after having done the level where I was a cat and then a fucking eagle, just how insanely cool that was. I was honestly expecting, and maybe they intended this and didn't have enough time, but I was expecting for when I swung off the swing sweat, for it to transform into like a rocket ship, and then I'm like flying through space or something. And then that didn't happen, and I was like, oh, okay. So like, I'll put it like this. I don't mean to say that the later levels weren't creative. I just don't think they were as creative as the early levels. But like when you're playing as Gus, that was cool, but I expected it to kind of go further, where maybe like you went into POV of the kite and got to actually explore. But like I said, these are non-criticisms. It's just, like, that's always going to be a non-criticism, that you wish it were longer, because by the very fact that you want to have played more, you enjoyed what you did play. it's not a criticism to say the game was short, because there's plenty of games that are short that I'm like, okay, I'm yeah. You're glad it's over, and you didn't, like, you don't have that feeling of, I wish there was more. So, I feel empty. I was enjoying that so much, and then it just stopped. It just stopped. I didn't get to explore that. I'm willing to bet that not letting you explore the house was done on purpose. And I've talked in the past about how video games can do things that other art can't. That my biggest, as much as, like I said earlier, I really don't care anymore what people think about it. One of my biggest arguments for video games being art has always been that they have the ability to connect to you in a way that other mediums can't. And I'll give a few examples. These are examples I always give when I discuss this stuff. For the longest time, I held off on giving one of these examples just because, like in videos and stuff, just because I knew David hadn't played it yet. But in Brothers Tale of Two Sons, that game accomplishes something that is not physically possible in any other art form. And in that game, I'll give a brief overview for anyone watching who hasn't played it. You control both brothers. You use the left stick to control one of them and the right stick to control the other. And then they each have shoulder buttons for their actions. Now, near the end of the game, the big brother dies. And already you feel it. Because, and I know this may seem like a silly thing to say, if you're, a bitter, jaded prick, you'll think that I'm just being silly here. But you feel the loss in your hand. You may not realize it, but you feel, David, when you see this, comment and tell me if you felt this, where once you start playing the rest of the game, and finishing up as the little brother, and you no longer need to use one of your hands, did that hand start to feel restless? Because that's how it was for me. And I think that allows you to feel that loss in a way that no other medium can. And then, near the end of the game, because of stuff that happened in his life, the little brother is afraid of water. And so he always needed his big brother to help. And so you would always press the big brother's action button to, help him swim across. But pretty much at the very end of the game, you have to cross some water, and it's only the little brother. And whether you do it right away, just out of habit, or after a while, you just decide to try it, you can only cross the water once you press the big brother's action button. And I just think those kind of things are something that can't be done in anything other than video games. And then you got, something like the ending of Metal Gear Solid 3, where you're basically forced to choose between betraying your country and basically dooming your country. I won't get into all the details of why it happened, but suffice it to say that you have to kill someone who you care greatly for, because otherwise bad shit's going to happen. But they're letting you do it, because I'm not going to talk about the plot because it's a game you should play your fucking self, but they want you to do it because their death is the only way that this shit can be prevented. But you're in a cutscene, so you don't expect to have to do anything, and then it pans out. Now here's the thing. If the game were shitty, it would have given you a quick time event, but it doesn't. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to do. It just sits there at the end of that cutscene, waiting. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to realize it. eventually you're going to realize that the game's waiting for you, the player, to pull the trigger. And I'm sorry, I don't care what some fat bastard sitting on a chair wants to say about video games not being art. I don't give a shit. I used to get mad. I used to get physically mad at people like that. But as I grew older, I realized I don't care. I don't care what they think. I think things like that's art. Art elicits emotions. And I think that video games can elicit emotions in a way that nothing else can. Hey guys, I'm recording a bit of post commentary here. I have a habit of rambling incoherently when playing games, and then starting on a subject that then branches off into another subject that then branches off into another subject that then transfers into something else that then morphs into something else, and then I end up forgetting the original fucking point I was trying to make. Now, David tells me that he finds this absolutely hilarious, so I usually just let it fucking happen for the lulz. But at this point, I was actually trying to make a very specific point, and I ended up giving several examples to back up my point, and then forgetting to make my original point. The original point I was trying to make was how this game could do something that only video games could do, that no other medium could do. And that's the way that it didn't let you explore that sunken house at the end. I was making the point that I don't think it was a budgetary thing. I don't think it was a time constraint thing. I think that it was a conscious decision to cut you off at that point. Because now you could say that something like that could happen in a movie or a book, but it doesn't have the same effect. And here's why. Because the plot of a movie or book is linear. Now, as games go, this game was linear, wasn't no Witcher 3 or anything. But it doesn't change the fact that you have that interactivity and you have levels to explore and whatnot. So, by the very nature of it, you're suddenly in Edith's little story thing, and you're going through the marshy marsh. And so you're in a level. You've just started your fucking level. You've literally just started your level. Any gamer isn't going to think that a level's going to start like that and then suddenly cut you off and say, nope, you don't get to finish the level. Having that happen in a movie or book wouldn't have the same effect, because you could just say, okay, that's the plot. That's the plot. The plot is that before the person got to finish reading their story, their mom stopped them because she's a bitch. But as a gamer, you have that feeling of, I've just started a level, this is a level, this is what a level in a video game is. So it then takes that away from the player. And by doing that, you're able to identify. You're actually able to identify with the character in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do if this was a movie or a book or anything like that. You're able to identify because you have that feeling of having your level taken away from you. You're enjoying the game. You don't want the game to end, and you're happy that a new level has started, and then that level has been taken away from you. And I think that that's amazing, because that's something that you just can't do in other mediums. So, yeah. Well, anyway. That was the game. I loved it. I'm looking forward to seeing what these people do next. Yeah. I kind of just want to sit here for a while. Kind of reflect. This was a very good video game. Thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.